Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
When I dialed the non-emergency number in the city, it always routes to 911.
It's always been extreme wait times, and then
call takers are I think I used the term earlier, stretched thin.
They usually seem frustrated or like annoyed that we're calling.
I have never witnessed the dispatch center doing a storm is something to say. These people are great at their job. They're multitasking, but to get 1,000 calls, which is over 100% of what you're normally used to, is taxing.
The first weekend of July brought severe thunderstorms to the metro St. Louis area, taking out power and interrupting internet service across the region. The weather conditions also created dangerous situations for people on roads and in their homes. And tragically, 2 people lost their lives. 33-year-old Catherine Cohn in the Forest Park Southeast neighborhood of St. Louis, and 5-year-old Robert R.J. Lawrence III in Jennings in North St. Louis County. Both were fatally injured by trees felled by the storming, Cohn in her car and Lawrence in his home bedroom. And in each case, people nearby, ranging from business owners and other people in the area to family and nearby neighbors, all called 911 for help that did not arrive in time. Sebastian Montes was a nearby neighbor who was among many people who called 911 to try to help Cohen. He told the Post-Dispatch on July 4th he felt hopeless waiting for help to arrive.
They show up, and then they try. When they show up, they're like, she's still alive, she's still breathing, she got a pulse. And I sit on the back just watching, and then they try to get at the whole thing. And then about 30 minutes later, they're like, she's gone. And then you can see the spirits of everybody just kind of like dispersed out, and then I'm just sitting there. They're like, I think we could have saved her.
Now, extreme weather events aside, shortfalls have plagued the 911 system in the St. Louis region for quite some time. The tragic loss of 2 lives brings attention once again to issues that impede effective emergency response. And there's both data in numbers and in real-life experiences that point to areas of urgent operational need. Joining me in studio to talk about that with a distinct experience and perspective is Karishma Furtado, former Senior Director of Data and Research with Forward Through Ferguson. Welcome back, Karishma.
Thank you, Elaine.
And thanks for being here. Now, before we begin the conversation, we had talked about a 911 dispatcher joining our show, and we had planned to bring you that experience today, but we've been unable to connect for today. So we hope to bring you that experience in a future show. Now, Karishma, when you heard about what happened in, again, both St. Louis City and St. Louis County, what was it that came to mind or to memory for you?
Yeah, first, tragic, deeply saddening that this happened. So my first instinct was one of immense sympathy for Ms. Cohen's family, for Robert Lawrence's family as well, and then was struck by a sense that this was not altogether surprising. Certainly, the 911 system was overrun that day and experiencing volumes unlike the norm. And under the normal circumstances, I think we have plenty of experience and data that suggests that our system is stretched thin and catastrophically thin, as was revealed that day in early July.
Yeah. No, you are here because of the work that you did with Forward Through Ferguson, and you're no longer with that nonprofit organization. But during your time there, the org began an examination of the 911 systems in St. Louis County and in the city of St. Louis. Can you talk about the data regarding reasons people call 911?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the privilege of leading this study of the region's 911 system. We wanted to get a sense of the lay of the 911 land, so to speak, and why people were calling and using 911, what it felt like to live within that system. So we looked at call data from across 5 years, 2015 to 2020, about 4.2 million calls, and this was just focused in St. Louis County PD. And we found that, as in other cities and regions, the primary reasons people call 911 are not for experiences of violent crime or major crime, as the FBI categorizes it, but rather for emergencies, oftentimes non-emergencies, but somewhat more mundane things like needing some sort of service. We found that 9.1% of the calls were for house alarms going off. About over 1 in 10 were traffic related. 1 in 4 were traffic or medical related in nature. And really only 20% of those calls, those millions of calls over those years, were related to some sort of violent crime.
Right. And part of the reason I wanted to bring that up is that in St. Louis, for many reasons that have to do with narratives around what plagues the city, that people associate 911 with crime. Mm-hmm. And yet the numbers that you were looking at did not indicate that that was the case.
Suggest otherwise, for sure. And I would say that certainly that narrative, that mental model of what 911 is for, echoes strongly in St. Louis, and not just in St. Louis. If you look at the origins of the 911 system in the 60s in response to civil unrest in urban cores, in response to perceptions of civil injustices, the 911 system was created as largely a system of control and, trying to keep people in line and tamp down this kind of civil disobedience and unruly behavior. And I think we still operate from that kind of headspace of 911 as a tool to correct some types of behavior like crime, as opposed to one of protection for all and compassion for all.
I'd like to invite you into the conversation. Have you had to dial 911 in recent years? What was your experience like? Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpr.org. So we've just talked about the reasons people call. The data itself is something that I'd like to talk with you about. And there are times when it seems like people saying, look at the data is assumed to mean a whole lot of things, but it's not really explained. And data is not nearly as simple as people maybe would like it to be. So talk with us about the data that you were looking at in order to put this report together. And that report, again, is the Fort Ferguson Transforming 911 report.
Right, and it can be found alongside a host of storytelling and profiles of folks at transforming911.org. So as you mentioned already, Elaine, this first set of analyses that are profiled and featured in this report came from St. Louis County PD, the largest police department in the region and the largest 911 call center, dispatch center in the region as well. That data consisted of all the calls received within those 5 years and all the categorizations of those calls as well, which I appreciate the point that data sounds easy and like the source of all the answers, but is rarely so for those of us who get the privilege, truly it is one, to sit down with it, because it was a lot. As you can imagine, the system needed to categorize calls and shunt them where they need to go, direct EMS, police, fire, sorts of responses, is complicated. And so we get to partner with our friends at Datalytics, who have done this kind of analysis for other cities many times, to start to make sense of what was going on within this one set of data alone, to start making meaning of those nature codes or codes that categorize the purpose of the call and the needed response to that call, and to start analyzing it from there.
So, insofar as that categorization, so the practical impediments that exist to even starting to get data together, even before you analyze as well, so lack of standardization.
Certainly. So I mentioned that we focused on St. Louis County PD and the calls that they received only. If we wanted to put together, like, ideally a holistic picture of what was going on in the region across all of the municipalities and all the different PSAPs or public safety answering points or call centers for 911, we would have a gargantuan task in front of us. And so we knew going in that we were not going to be able to accomplish that because of the fragmentation of our 911 landscape and the implications of that fragmentation for the data analysis, the pulling everything together, not to speak of all the sort of practical realities of that in terms of delivering 911 and other municipal services. So each one of those PSAPs collects data differently. Each one of them has their own customized system. They're all slightly different, and so the process of even getting them to agree to share the data with us would have taken months and months and months. It took months and months to get just one PSAP's data. And then the process of aggregating and harmonizing that data to be able to actually analyze it would have taken even longer.
Right. Now, Jessica is calling from St. Louis with some perspective from a personal experience point of view. Jessica, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Hi, yes. So I have, like I was saying with our guy, I have like both personal and professional experience, and it's unfortunately been negative. I worked for a crisis hotline, and anytime we would call needing support for our crisis clients, we would be on hold wait times for 10, 15 minutes. I think the longest I was ever on hold was like 45 minutes. And the same it holds true anytime I've called in regards to like personal an accident or something. It's always been extreme wait times and then not met with much compassion or respect by the answerers, the dispatchers. They usually seem frustrated or like annoyed that we're calling for help.
You're nodding, Karishma.
Yeah, it's deeply unfortunate that was Jessica's experience, but again, tracks with what we've seen in the data, not just from Forward Through Ferguson's reporting, but from other, including St. Louis Public Radio's reporting and other news outlets reporting on what 911 has been like from people's experience. Call takers are, as I think I used the term earlier, stretched thin. We're widely understaffed in those departments, and they're undervalued as well. They're not compensated as they should be. They're not classified the way they should be so that they're protected legally and just valued in a profession that is incredibly hard.
Right.
And that all translates to the experience that a person like Jessica or many of us have had on the line with them all too often, I think, despite the best of efforts.
Thank you for your call, Jessica. Jessica called us at 314-382-8255. That's 314-382-TALK. The line is also open to you. Next, let's hear from Ryan in St. Louis. Ryan, you're on St. Louis on the Air.
Hi there. Thanks for taking the call. My experience is when I dialed the non-emergency number in the city, it always routes to 911. And my question is, does the data that you're showing, does it reflect that? Does it show that is a non-emergency call, even though the 911 dispatchers are assisting with that? And also, does the dispatcher know that is a non-emergency call coming in, in order to handle it properly?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. Our data start after the point at which such categorization, if it happens, is made. So in our data set, all calls are equal emergency, non-emergency. And so I can't directly speak to whether a call taker, a dispatcher, is able to discern whether an incoming call is an emergency call coming through 911 or a non-emergency call coming in through the non-emergency line. But I think that's a very interesting question worth examining as we think about how we can better triage and route attention where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the experience of dispatchers, as you said, they are not paid enough. There are not enough of them. When it comes to the work that they're doing, was there any indication, maybe in some of the storytelling or in anecdotes that you heard, of the qualitative data, as to why that's happening and whether there is a difference between the way folks are experiencing things in the county than in the city?
I don't know that I can speak necessarily to the differences in how folks are experiencing working in the 911 system in the city versus the county, since most of our evaluation and research has thus far focused on the county with active plans underway to do similar types of work in the city.
We also have Lisa calling from the Central West End. Lisa, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Hello.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Yes,
so
please. Go ahead.
I'm a Central West End resident, and I kind of also wanted to point out, in case you haven't discussed, I've had pretty good responses with the non-emergency police number. Often I have to kind of weigh which one do I want to call, 911 or the non-emergency. So that said, most recently, meaning this year, had two to three instances where hold. Sorry about a siren going by. Well, on 911 with just having to eventually hang up. So, moving on from that, I just want to say I get exasperated having to listen to county versus city issues.
And thank you. We'll sort of take that up. So county versus city is something that we're looking at, or not versus, it's actually and, right? Mm-hmm. And what was the reason for approaching data in that way?
Half a reality of where things stand. I think a lot of us agree that thinking in this fragmented way doesn't feel good in a lot of different ways. And it is our reality right now. Mm-hmm. If we want to imagine a system in a future that is more holistic and not so broken and divided, I think we've got to build from where we are and move forward from there. And St. Louis City and St. Louis County are the largest police and 911 forces in the region. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to start with them.
And just in this last minute, what is the kind of data that you think we need to be looking at, whether it is available or not, when it comes to addressing these systemic issues with 911 and emergency response?
Yeah, I think more harmonized data, or at the very least data from more PSAPs made publicly available on calls coming in, from where, how long it takes to respond to them, and nature code would be tremendously useful in helping to calibrate a 911 system that's better suited to the region's needs. Mm-hmm. And helps us in the research space to be partners in accountability for our government services.
And do you think we're on our way to that?
I think that there are some promising signs.
Mm-hmm. We definitely will pick up this conversation again. Thank you to those who called. We appreciate your contributing to this conversation. Karishma Furtado is the former Senior Director of Data and Research with Forward Through Ferguson. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Elaine.
Today's segment was produced by Aula Kuzic.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.